Hey, and welcome to the Mickey and Minutes Podcast, the short Disney show.
Quick conversations, information, and inspiration.
I'm your host, Nick Lazaga.
And I'm Andy Gootz.
Let's go! Hey, what's going on, Andrew?
Nicholas, back in the studio and back on the mics, man.
Dude, we're doing it again, man. We're revisiting a topic that we had a great time talking about, and we're so stoked to get back to this topic.
Oh, yeah.
On the last episode, it was a two-parter. We were breaking down all the announcements from D23 Expo for the domestic parks, and we decided to leave something kind of out, and that was the Cars announcement from Magic Kingdom, because we're going to make that, instead of part of the D23 episodes, we're going to make that part of our Future of Frontierland series.
Yeah, a lot going on in Frontierland, a lot to discuss.
Yeah, so a few episodes before that, if you've been listening to this season, to season 6, we did the Future of Frontierland. It was a 2-part episode. And at that point, Andrew, when we first started this series, a lot of this was kind of just rumors, right?
Speculations, yeah. And then thoughts on, and then also thoughts on, you know, our opinions and things that we would want in Frontierland.
Yeah, the reason we did that episode in the first place was because they announced there was a rumor announced that they were going to close the Frontierland shooting gallery. And with Tiana's Bayou Adventure, you know, being in the works and all that stuff, it kind of sparked this idea that, hey, let's talk about what's going on with Frontierland. And honestly, since we recorded those 2 episodes, things have just snowballed for Frontierland. Like
dramatically.
It's ridiculous, everything that's happening over there. And, you know, one of the questions we're going to answer in this episode is, should it still be called Frontierland? So we'll get to that.
Are these changes for the best? Are these changes for the best? What's good? What's bad? What's okay?
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So if you didn't listen to part 1 and part 2 of Future of Frontierland, go back and listen to those. They're really great. But let's do a quick recap of what we talked about on those episodes.
Sure.
So yeah, Frontierland, it's drastically changing. And like I said earlier, it started. This idea started with the Frontierland Shooting Gallery being replaced with a DVC lounge. That's nuts. That's happening. It's a go. There's already construction walls in front of it now.
So goodbye shooting range.
Yeah. It says like a new frontier is coming or something like that. We'll get into it. The other thing was Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which is now open. At the time of recording that episode, it wasn't open yet. But we were talking about how Tiana's Bayou Adventure taking place in New Orleans doesn't really fit or taking place in Louisiana doesn't really fit the aesthetic of Frontierland. And the other thing, the last thing we talked about was the Country Bear Jamboree.
Yes.
Getting an update with some new Disney songs.
Which also wasn't out and now is.
And now is, exactly. So this is kind of like an updated version of our Future of Frontierland series. We're going to talk about those things, how they've played out, and how what was announced at D23 Expo is going to play into the Future of Frontierland. So let's dive right in, Andrew.
Yeah, and this isn't really speculation anymore. The last episode was a lot of our guesses, but this is solid. This is now fact. This is happening to Frontierland. So yeah, man, kick us off.
All right. So neither one of us have ridden Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I will be going back to the parks in November, so I'm going to finally ride Tiana's Bayou Adventure and experience it in person. But Andrew, you convinced me to do something that I don't normally do.
Cheat, Nick.
Yeah.
Yes, I cheat. I cheat. As soon as something comes out, I'll watch the point of view videos on YouTube the next day because there's so many people that do it, right? And me personally, I'm never confident on when my next Disney trip is going to be, and I want to be in on it, right? I want to know what's happening, and I want to form my opinions as soon as I can.
Yeah. So if you've been listening to this show for a long time, you may know that Splash Mountain was my favorite attraction of all time. It has a special place in my heart. I've always loved just the fact that, you know, not only was it a thrill ride with that big drop, but it had, you know, all the story elements of a dark ride, the animatronics, the music. It was a log flume ride, you know, better on a boat, all that stuff. It was always my favorite ride. Great music, all that stuff. So Tiana's Bayou Adventure being announced, you know, it hit me hard. But I cheated, yeah. So Andrew convinced me. He watched it. He was like, man, you got to watch this. I have feelings. So I was like, all right, I'll watch this. And we'll talk about our feelings.
all the feelings. Tiana's, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess the consensus is, Andrew, that it's not very good. and not necessarily because it's, replacing Splash Mountain or anything like that. I think there's a lot wrong with it. I feel like what we talked, I mean, we haven't ridden in person
Yeah,
yet, so it's hard to
of
judge
course
really.
not.
But I feel like, there's a lot of cool animatronics, but there's a lot of dead space, right? The songs
It
are cool, but the laughing place scene was completely, it's weird, right?
it's fine. And to your point, it's not the retheme, it's not Tiana's, it's not getting rid of Splash Mountain, but I just feel like the implementation of the retheme was quick and lazy is not the right word, but just way more could have been done with it, right? I mean, with Splash Mountain, there's animatronics every second of the ride. There's something to look at, something to see, something exciting every step of the way. With Tiana's, they were really promoting just the next generation of animatronics going to be featured in the ride. And don't get me wrong, the animatronics that are there are amazing. The issue is, at least in my opinion, is there's too few of them and there's just way too many screens. Like to your point, you
Yeah,
mentioned the laughing place. The laughing place is
it got weird,
now
man.
it's all screens.
Yeah.
It's all screens. And that's not what you want with a dark ride boat ride at Disney World or
It's
Disneyland.
like it's like they instead of they did like quality over quantity, right? They put really great looking, amazing animatronics, but so
Few
few of them.
amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I guess the point here on this Frontierland overview is that it doesn't fit in Frontierland because it's the Bayou, it's Louisiana, all that stuff. Like I said before, one can argue that Splash Mountain didn't really fit either, but
Yes.
you know that's neither here nor there. Whatever. So we both also kind of cheated on the Country Bear Jamboree retheme.
Yes, we
That's
did.
now open.
Yes,
It's
it is.
the Country Bear Musical Jamboree. They're singing Disney songs. I didn't watch the full show. I saw kind of like a bunch of clips from it. I
I
could piece it
watched. I watched
together.
the. I as in typical me fashion. I cheated and of course watched the full show.
Yeah, and you texted me kind of just saying that it was underwhelming, right?
It was. It wasn't great. It wasn't
It was
terrible. It
fine.
was fine. It
The
was
word of the day is
fine.
fine.
It
It's
was
fine.
fine. It was fine. I
Okay.
wasn't. Here's my piece, and we alluded to this in the Frontierland episode, the previous one that we keep talking about. But me, as a folk singer, as a banjo player, my roots are in folk. I was pumped. I was pumped for like all of these folk arrangements, what have you, and I was expected to be just blown away, and it was fine. It was okay. I mean,
It was another Disney sing along,
it was
right?
another Disney sing along, and I guess I was anticipating again being really excited to see it, but watching it and actually seeing the implementation of it, it was honestly a little. It felt a little weird. It just honestly felt a little weird. It felt a little out of context that the Country Bears were singing songs from various. I mean, even they opened it with Zootopia. They opened it with Try Anything, the Gazelle song, the Shakira song from Zootopia. And it something didn't seem right. Honestly, like I would have preferred them singing their kitschy original folksy songs that they had, or doing new original folksy songs, right? I will say this. I will say this. They updated the stage, they updated the costumes, they did update the animatronics. That was great. That was needed, in my opinion.
A
In
little
hindsight,
TLC.
a little TLC was you can never go wrong. I think I would have preferred another batch of original tunes along with it, fresh original tunes that fit more of the Country Bears theme and the history and what you originally went for the Country Bears.
I agree. And again, going with this idea of these, overarching idea of Frontierland, it doesn't really work. The Country Bear Jamboree was a Magic Kingdom original. One of the few things, honestly, that we kind of had over Disneyland that wasn't some sort of copy.
Yeah.
It was an original to the Magic Kingdom, and it was part of Frontierland. It was this idea of these bears singing these country songs, which it worked with the theme of Frontierland at the time. And yeah, it was a little kitschy, right? A little campy now. So yeah, it needed some love, but I don't know if Disney songs was the way to go.
Agreed.
Um, so that's kind of where we are now. And At D23, it was announced that a Cars Land would be coming to the Magic Kingdom, and we kind of alluded to the fact on the last episode that we were disappointed about this. And the reason isn't because of Cars. Let me just get that
No,
out there.
Cars,
Right?
love Cars, man. Cars is awesome.
Yeah. Cars is a really cool IP. It's not my favorite IP by any means, but I think it's a great IP. I think it's used really well in Disneyland. The problem isn't Cars, right? The problem is where it's going. And I think we did mention this on the last episode that what they're going to do is drain the rivers of America, get rid of the riverboat and all the stuff that comes with the rivers of America, get rid of Tom Sawyer's Island, and put Cars there. So when Josh D'Amaro announced this, he said, the American West has always been about keeping your eyes on the horizon, believing in yourself, carving your own path, and striving toward success. That goes for miners in the mountains, bears in the country, a princess from the bayou, or a race car from the big city. And that was his idea in how to fit Cars in here, right? And he said something along the lines of a new frontier is coming.
Yeah.
And it got us to realize, I don't think it's so much that Disney doesn't care about the idea of Frontierland anymore. I think it's more the fact that they're trying to rebrand it, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to say Frontierland isn't cowboys anymore, right? When Disneyland was first built in the 1950s, cowboys was the big deal, right? We had all these things. We had Davy Crockett. Walt was super into this whole cowboy explosion. It was super popular back then. So that's why they got a Frontierland in the first place.
And I think to this point, Nick, you're talking about it's not that it's not Cars. We love Cars. The IP is great. Think about when we think about Cars Land and Disneyland, the reason why it works is because it's just a carbon copy of Radiator Springs. And that's what we want, right? When you're watching Cars, that's what you want to be in.
Yeah. And just you think of California, the car culture in California is such a big deal.
Great
right?
Point.
It's all about that. It's about Route 66. It's about hitting the open road. And that fits, the California adventure vibe. Now, one can argue, oh, well, all of Route 66 is in California. Yeah, okay. It's about car culture, right?
Right.
That's what it's about. And so bringing that into the Magic Kingdom, that's fine. Sure.
But the way that they're going to do it, it seems is they're trying to make Cars country. They're trying to make Cars Western, which
they're fitting a square peg into a round hole, right?
Yeah,
they're trying to shoehorn it into it's like they had this idea, they didn't know where to put it, and they're like, well, let's just put it in Frontierland. And so there was an idea. I'm gonna kind of rewind in history for a minute here, Andrew.
Yeah.
When the Magic Kingdom was first being developed, there was this really great idea in Imagineering. And it was called the Western River Expedition. And actually, that was part of it. The whole project was going to be called Thunder Mesa, right? So again, right away, you hear Thunder, you're already thinking, okay, Big Thunder Mountain.
Thunder, yep.
So Big Thunder Mountain was a super scaled down version of this. And I want to do a full episode on this, so I'm only going to kind of skim this because this is crazy.
Totally.
This whole complex was going to be called Thunder Mesa. It was going to have a log flume attraction. We got Splash Mountain, so we kind of got it, right? This was going to be, this was all going to be Western themed. So a log flume attraction. We're going to have a runaway mine train attraction.
Big Thunder
Mountain. Yep. And we were going to get a restaurant, like a Blue Bayou style restaurant. Have you been to the Blue Bayou in Disneyland?
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah, so you can look out and see the boats going by. Kind of like the Mexico Pavilion at Epcot.
Totally.
We're going to have an attraction like that overlooking this e-ticket attraction, which was going to be called the Western River Expedition. And this was going to be kind of think Pirates of the Caribbean, but with cowboys.
Oh, yes.
And that's what it was going to be.
Very cool.
And so they were taking this idea of Pirates of the Caribbean because they were thinking, all right, Pirates of the Caribbean is very successful in California, but in Florida, pirates are too close to home. People aren't going to care about it. So let's do something completely different. Let's take the idea of a pirate's boat ride and make it cowboys.
So
we're going to have this entire complex.
That'd be cool.
In Frontierland, and that was going to be Frontierland. This whole cowboy experience, and this
the movie franchise that we would have gotten from that alone.
Could you imagine?
Makes me excited. I know, it makes me excited. Yeah.
And so there was so many things, like we were just saying, that were kind of cherry picked out of this idea. They basically told Imagineering, this is great, but it's too expensive. What can we take out of this? So the runaway mine train idea is what won out. So we got Big Thunder Mountain.
Sure.
And then later on, they're like, hey, we've had this idea of doing a log flume. Let's not make it about cowboys. Let's do something else. So they did Song of the South. They made Splash Mountain, right?
Yeah.
And then, when people started going to the Magic Kingdom, the first question they were asking was, where's Pirates of the Caribbean? Where's Pirates of the Caribbean? So they were like, all right, let's not do that cowboy themed boat ride. Let's just do actual Pirates of the Caribbean.
Give the people
want
what they
it.
want. Yeah, give the people
exactly. And so that's how we ended up losing all of this. But when you think about,
a Cowboys ride sounds so cool.
It's crazy. I have this book. It's actually a set of 2 books, like coffee table books from Mark Davis, the legendary Imagineer. Oh, yeah. And in it are tons of his concept art pieces. There's an entire section on Western River Expedition and Thunder Mesa.
Things that never came to be.
Yeah, man. So if you think about that, and then you think about Magic Kingdom's Frontierland, that's what it was going to be, right? And so we got things from Disneyland. We got Tom Sawyer's Island. We got the Rivers of America. Instead of the Mark Twain riverboat in Disneyland, we got the Liberty Bell. All kind of the same vibe. All of Frontierland flowed from Liberty Square. Yes. Right? Liberty Square was another concept that Walt wanted to build in Disneyland. It never got around, so more Walt poured into Magic Kingdom. The whole idea was moving westward from Liberty Square, westward expansion, etc. So it was beautifully planned out. But of course, when you got to the other end of it, this whole thing didn't get built. This whole Thunder Mesa didn't get built, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what we did get was this strip where we have, the Country Bear Jamboree. We had the shooting gallery. We had the Golden Horseshoe restaurant. We got Pecos Bill restaurant. Yeah. And it's this little, just a street, basically, right?
That's a good point. I never really honestly thought about it until now, but it's like a strip mall of Western themed attractions.
Yeah, it's like Western storefronts, basically, right?
Yes.
That's essentially what it is. Strip mall is a perfect way to put it. That's what we ended up getting. Yeah. From this brilliant idea of Thunder Mesa, it got, so shrunk down. And we did get Big Thunder, which of course, Big Thunder is the crowning jewel of this whole land.
Totally.
Man, what we could have had.
What we could have had. I know. I'm really hung up on this Cowboys idea because having cowboys and pirates in the Disney universe would have fit beautifully, because I think that is really one overarching theme that Disney really hasn't touched a whole lot. I mean, they tried to a little bit with the Lone Ranger, which was
Johnny Depp.
We won't even get into that.
It didn't work. Yeah,
it didn't work. Yeah. But yeah, Cowboys would have been the natural next step.
And like we talked about on the previous show, just the cowboy genre, it doesn't hit anymore. And I think, we've come so far as a nation that the idea of, cowboys versus Native Americans is not appropriate anymore, right? Fair. So this whole idea of what this whole land was kind of built around, it doesn't hit for today's culture, right?
Agreed.
So think about Gen Z and further. These are the people growing up with Magic Kingdom, as we get older and we're the grumpy Disney adults. Yeah. And, they're the ones taking their kids eventually to these places, and cars is what they want and stuff. But it goes back to this idea, and the whole point of this episode is Frontierland. Let's talk about this. The theme of Frontierland, as Josh D'Amaro put it, it's been about keeping your eyes on the horizon, believing in yourself, carving your own path, and striving towards success. Somebody else said this, but I completely agree with this. That phrase, keeping your eyes on the horizon, believing in yourself, carving your own path, striving towards success, that could be used to describe every land in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, great
it's
point.
It's so broad.
It's pretty vague.
It doesn't really mean anything. Yeah.
It's just inspirational. It just makes you feel good.
Yeah. It seems like a poster someone would have on their college dorm.
Like Tomorrowland.
Exactly. Adventureland, eye on the horizon, believe in yourself. Fantasyland, carve your own path. Think about these princesses, carving their own path, strive towards success. It doesn't mean anything with Frontierland, And he says that goes for miners in the mountains. Okay, sure, cool. Bears in the country bears, cool. A princess from the bayou. Yeah, that applies to a princess from the bayou.
It does.
Sure,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
A race car in the big city. That applies. Yeah. So he's trying to sell people this idea, Frontierland works. And that's what he said. And if you really think about it, everyone's like, oh, yeah, that works. That makes sense. But does it have anything to do with Frontierland? No, it doesn't.
But again, like you just said it, race cars in the big city, but they're not putting race cars in the big city. They're putting race cars so I guess do you want to talk about what these cars attractions are actually going
Yeah,
to
let's
be?
talk
Because
about that.
that's where my issue is too a little bit, is the theme behind these cars attractions just doesn't really seem to hit or really make sense in my
Yeah, so the
opinion.
idea is that these characters from the Cars universe, they're leaving Radiator Springs because in the Cars universe, the whole world is cars, right?
Yep.
They're not isolated to one section. They inhabit the whole world. So they're leaving Radiator Springs and they're heading west, which is the point of, being in Frontierland. They're heading west, and one of the attractions is going to be a race rally through the mountains. So if you look at the concept art, they look like off-road vehicles, right?
Yeah, like a mud race.
Yeah, like four-wheel drive and all that stuff. It looks pretty cool going up and down mountains and stuff. But the mountains, they're not the same mountains as Big Thunder Mountain, right? Big Thunder Mountain's based like what,
Rocky,
Arizona?
like yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Like Mesa Mountains.
Yeah. And so these are different. So
They're more
initially,
they're
right
more
off,
wilderness mountain, more like California mountains ish.
right, yeah.
Foliage,
Um,
lots of trees,
yeah. So this idea of like, I guess going mudding or whatever,
mudding. Yeah,
that's cool. That's cool for a lot of people. But is that
is
Frontierland?
that Frontierland?
Right. And the other one is just going to be a smaller. They called it an attraction for smaller racers. We don't know what that's going to be at all.
Yeah,
I imagine maybe something like from Cars Land, like Tow Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, which probably not that one because we have Alien Swirly Saucers in
right.
same ride.
Yep.
So maybe something like Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters.
I mean, but to that point, we have the Astro Orbiter and Aladdin's
And
Magic
Dumbo.
Carpet and Dumbo, which are
That's true.
virtually all the same ride too. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. But wouldn't this Cars themed attraction have worked better replacing Tomorrowland Speedway?
yeah, oh,
Right?
big time,
That kind of could have worked.
big time. Yeah,
In my brain, I always imagined that being replaced by like Mickey.
it's
and the
already
Roadster
it's
Racers.
already cars. There's already it's
Exactly.
already cars.
Which brings up an idea that if we do get a Cars attraction, would they just gut Tomorrowland Speedway and give us something really cool for Tomorrowland? Like
Ooh.
that would be awesome. But that also kind of butts up to Fantasyland, so they can use that plot of land for either Tomorrowland or Fantasyland.
Or some kind of both that borders both themes a little bit.
Right. But yeah, so those are the Cars attraction. They're going to be plopped down on Rivers of America. Andrew, serious question.
Okay.
When was the last time you went to Tom Sawyer's Island?
Ooh, bro, you're gonna hate me.
Never.
I have never even really had a desire to go to Tom Sawyer's Island, to be honest with you, man.
And that's why they're getting. It's your fault.
It's
I'm
my
kidding.
fault.
It's no. Honestly, the last time
Yeah.
I went to Tom Sawyer's Island, it was maybe 10 years ago. It was
Okay,
definitely it was before I was married, it was before I met my wife.
Yeah.
And I went over there with my siblings and we had a good time, We
Yeah.
went around, but like on the island, there's a restaurant called, Aunt Polly's. That's never open. Ever. Open. And I think they gave up on it because people don't go back there.
Yeah,
There's some
yeah.
rocking chairs, there's some caves that you explore, there's some cool like rope bridges, and then there's like a
And like
fort.
scenes from the Tom Sawyer book that you
Exactly,
can-
yeah, like the whitewashed fence, and love that
Huck and Tom. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's all based on this, super Americana,
Big time. Mark
uh,
Twain. Yeah.
Exactly. It's cool. It's awesome. But again, it's something that dates back to when Walt was building Disneyland. And it's this idea of something that's really cool from that time period that, like you said, most people don't go over there. The only way to get to Tom Sawyer's Island is by taking a raft. And the island closes at sundown. So
You're stuck there too. Like you got to really plan for
you got to
it.
wait for another
Yeah,
raft to leave and
come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. There's some cool areas. There's like forts, and there used to be like rifles in the forts. You can like shoot out from the fort. I bet you those are gone now.
Probably. Yeah.
Like from before. Who knows? But this whole, from Disney's point of view, it's this giant thing in the middle of their park that no one goes to. It's very hard to get to. It doesn't generate any revenue. They don't sell merch for Tom Sawyer's Island.
No.
Like I heard that one of the deciding factors for putting Cars in Magic Kingdom was the merch sales. The fact that they make bank on Cars merch.
There's even like some rumors that was even the whole purpose of why Cars was even made in the first place.
Just
right?
a money grab for little boys.
I mean, it is. Yeah, big
it
time.
is, man.
So I guess question for you, Nick. There's we obviously have feelings about Cars Land being in Magic Kingdom and Tom Sawyer Island, going away and draining the river.
I
But
haven't even gotten to my feelings yet, but we'll get there.
right. But I guess is it so much that like, it's the Cars IP that's going in there, or is it really just that they're trying to just kind of force a fake frontier narrative, with Frontierland, when in reality, if they just called Frontierland something different, it could open up a little bit more of a better situation, right? Or I guess a better series of rides.
Andrew, you're exactly on my wavelength right now.
Yeah.
So this is what I was thinking. The reason I don't like this project is because they're calling it Frontierland, or as Mater said in his little like iPhone video, Frontierland. Yeah. All right. Frontierland, sure. My whole problem with it is honestly the fact that they're still calling this Frontierland. Right. We have the Bayou. That's not Frontierland. We have the Country Bears singing modern Disney songs. That takes you out of the time and place, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of Frontierland, it's a setting, it's a time and a place, not just a place. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it's Western. It's a time and a place, and that takes you out of it.
But even then, we're like I guess you can argue that the only thing remaining from even the Western theme would just be Country Bears, and then everything else, even I guess beside then of course Big Thunder, but everything else isn't.
And the Golden Horseshoe restaurant
isn't Western anymore.
Yeah, they have the Golden Horseshoe restaurant, which is like an old saloon, and they have Pecos Bill restaurant, which we alluded to on a previous episode that might be changed to Tiana's Palace at some point.
Yeah,
which is fine. So, Andrew, I have a proposal. This is kind of like my armchair imagineering.
Going back to armchairing.
Yep. We did such a great job, I think, last time. This is fine.
Give it to me.
I would be happy if they just plow ahead with this idea, Tiana's Bayou, all this stuff, the Cars thing, if they change the names. And so here's my idea. Okay. This strip of land where we call it the strip mall, right? The Frontierland strip mall.
Frontierland strip mall.
So we have Country Bears. We'll have whatever the DVC lounge is, probably going to be themed to something Western.
Sure.
And, Golden Horseshoe, all this stuff. I propose we call that area Frontier Trail. If you think about like a trail, you think
just
about
just that area,
just that strip
of areas. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking mini lands,
and it stops where?
It'll stop at Pecos Bill.
Okay.
Until Pecos Bill presumably becomes
Frontier Trail.
Tiana's.
Sure.
So Frontier Trail, right? You hear the word trail, you think of, the westward expansion, you think of the wagon trails, the wagons on the trail and the cowboys.
And a strip. You think of something smaller. Just something finite. Yeah.
It's a trail. It's Frontier Trail.
I like that.
And then you go over to
Tiana's
area, and I propose we steal the name from Disneyland, call it Bayou Country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That works. Because then, presumably you'd have Tiana's Palace, you'd have Tiana's Bayou Adventure, you have the little shops over there, maybe like a little cart, a beignet cart or something.
Oh, yes.
And have that corner be Bayou Country.
Love it.
So far, I'm happy.
I'm happy too.
And then, Cars area, call it whatever you want to call it. Call it Cars Land, call it whatever, Road Rally, whatever. I don't care. Call it something to do with cars. Make that its own land. And then
in this world that we're changing the theme of Frontierland and getting rid of Frontierland. If we were to get rid of Frontierland, do you still think that they would put Cars? Do you think Cars would go into Magic Kingdom regardless? And like, do you think that? Do you think that Cars would even also would have kept to like the mudding theme and the racing through the mountains theme if there was a retheme of Frontierland or renaming?
I think,
or they would have it a little bit more liberties. They would have been able to broaden their ideas. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
But regardless, if we just call that Cars Land and not have it be part of Frontierland, then that'd be its own thing. And then we land on the area with Big Thunder Mountain and the train station, and we can call that Thunder Mesa. A little tip of the hat to what could have been. Right. And have the train station be called the Thunder Mesa train station. And then you have the Big Thunder Mining Company in Thunder Mesa. And, they could even expand this Thunder Mesa idea to have like some more, some of the stuff that we maybe could have gotten, maybe that Blue Bayou style restaurant, maybe some sort of restaurant back there, and have it just be sectioned off into these little mini lands. And, we have Villains Land coming and stuff soon too. And I heard someone else say that Walt's idea for Disneyland, it revolved around this hub and spoke concept, right? Where the middle is the hub, and then you take these
Your
different
branches. Yeah,
paths
yeah.
to different lands. Well, that idea is completely broken because there are some lands you cannot get to from the hub,
From the castle.
right? Yeah.
The castle being the hub,
The
basically, right?
castle area being the hub, right?
Yeah.
It's the forecourt area. It's where the partner statue is. That's the hub.
Yes.
Disneyland has it. All the castle parks have a hub.
Yes.
But there's some areas you can't get to from the hub.
Yes.
And so this idea of having these like 6 lands that are, whatever land, like
Yep.
that stems from the hub and spoke. That doesn't really matter anymore if they're getting rid of that idea. So in Disneyland, for instance, you can't get to Galaxy's Edge from the hub.
No, yeah, good point.
So that's not really part of the hub and spoke anymore. In Magic Kingdom, you won't be able to get to Cars Land from the hub. You won't be able to get to Villains Land directly from the hub. So why are we sticking to this idea of, Tomorrowland, Frontierland, Adventureland, any of that stuff anymore? If they're going to get rid of all the theming for Frontierland, then does it matter to have these overarching themes? Especially you think of like Hollywood Studios where the themes are based on IPs, right? Yeah. So you have Star Wars Land, you have Toy Story Land, you're going to have Monsters Inc. Land.
Yeah.
We have Muppet Courtyard. Yep. So, that
so I guess
throw away the whole concept.
Not that I don't like it, because I do. I think it's great, but I'm just playing devil's advocate for listeners' purposes, I suppose. Is that too many lands? Is that just too many?
I think at that point, why do the lands have to be big? If we're sticking to the idea of theming, right? If you get rid of theming, then it just becomes an amusement park, right? Then it just becomes a Six Flags where you have Bugs Bunny roller coaster, then you have whatever. Like there's no theme.
That's true.
There's no cohesive thread. And every land in a Disney park needs to have a cohesive thread. And if Frontierland doesn't have that anymore, then what's the point of calling it Frontierland? What's the point of having Big Thunder Mountain next to a bayou, next to a Cars Road Rally? These all take place in different places in different time periods.
Yeah.
They don't work together at all. So why even have it be a land anymore?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And too, again, we mentioned this in the previous episode. In general, the concept of just frontier, that's it's just an older generation idea that, this next younger generation that's coming up, they don't really have any sort of like solid ground of foundation to just kind of even reference. Like people aren't watching John Wayne movies anymore.
Exactly. When they got rid of the Great Movie Ride and we lost that beautiful Western scene, I feel like that was the last like thing that a kid can get on and be like, oh, hey, that's cool. Cowboys are cool. I want to look more into that. Yeah. Right. And, it also has to do with parenting. And don't get me wrong. I feel like kids need to know American history. I feel like they need to study this. They need to know about westward expansion and the Old West and all this cool stuff. Right. And if that sparks an interest in a kid, that's cool. Right. So I don't want to throw all that away. But I feel like if Disney's abandoning it, then just if you're going to abandon it and retheme.
What about the concept? I mean, you hit this point a little bit earlier in this episode when you're saying that, the idea of, like cowboys versus Native Americans, isn't okay anymore, which is totally accurate and it shouldn't be. But cowboy culture is still awesome. Rodeo.
It is. It's
riding horses,
right, okay.
Rodeos, riding horses, even just like the fundamental aspect of a cowboy now, it's being on the ranch, herding, tending to the land, right? And, lassos and things of that nature, like that.
You're not wrong.
That culture is still sweet. I mean, living in Texas, we live in Texas, man. Like we go to the rodeo every year. Like that's a thing, right?
Right. So cowboys are still a thing. The people on ranches, and we go to the San Antonio rodeo like almost annually here, right?
Yeah,
it's cool. You get to see
awesome.
Like the bull riding and all that cool stuff.
My uncle was a bull rider and rode broncos and was a cattle roper, and I am fully raised on that.
I guess the idea of
that's maybe more niche. That is more niche just to Texas.
Yeah, obviously cowboys still exist in the modern world, but it's not this idea of like the old Western cowboy kicking in the saloon door and
ordering a whiskey at the bar.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly. And all the fun stuff that goes on upstairs.
It's basically the entire movie of Back to the Future 3.
Back to the Future 3. Which if someone's going to look me in the eyes and tell me that movie isn't super cool,
Oh no,
then
I love it.
I'm
People
just
hate
gonna-
on Back to the Future 3. I love Back to the Future 3. I think it's
I
great.
love that movie, and
Yeah.
that's exactly that's another. It hits. If you
does.
watch it,
Yeah,
it's
great.
cool.
It's great. I love
But
it.
Disney doesn't think that it works anymore, and they're really not even willing to try anymore. I feel like after the Lone Ranger, they just kind of gave up.
They did. And then now to our point, they're trying to makeshift things to kind of be it when they're not.
And I don't want to be that guy, but I feel like Disney is really going overboard on trying to avoid certain topics to the point
Mm,
where they're being completely erased, and they don't have to be, right? So yes, cowboys versus Native Americans is offensive, and that's obviously true, but it doesn't mean we get rid of cowboys too, right? You don't
yeah,
throw the
yes.
baby out with the bathwater,
Yeah, I'm with
right?
you. I'm with you.
And the idea of like, okay, obviously Song of the South was problematic and that attraction was tied to it, so it ended up being problematic.
Of
But
course.
there's things you could do, to kind of keep the Southern charm alive. You don't have to get rid of everything that has a Southern charm, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you could argue that in New Orleans and all that stuff still has that Southern charm to it.
It does. Yeah.
So
But again, New Orleans has all the Southern charm. I mean, it's New Orleans, but it's not
but
frontier.
it's different, exactly.
It's different. Therefore, and like again, we're saying like the idea of putting Tiana's there is great, but do we need to still call it? Do we still need to call it Frontierland?
So I'd say the idea of putting a Tiana ride is great, not the idea of putting Tiana there is
Yes.
great.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that's the major difference, and I just feel like Disney is there too much where they're just like, oh, this is slightly problematic, let's get rid of it completely. Instead of like, how can we fix it? How can we make it not problematic? But I will say a great example of them approaching something with care and actually fixing it in a good way is, have you seen the renovated Neverland Indians theme in Magic Kingdom on Peter Pan's Flight?
Yes. Yes.
So they took this theme, this scene where they had the Neverland tribe, and it had some slightly offensive depictions of Native Americans, a lot of stereotypes in the way that they designed the characters because they were modeled directly after
Cartoon.
the movie.
Yeah,
exactly. And so what they did, instead of taking out the Native Americans completely, they put some new animatronics in that are made with more care. They look good, right? We have Tiger Lily dancing around the fire.
They just took the
something,
chief.
right?
They took the chief out just in general. Yeah,
And they made it look good.
Yeah.
And I feel like that shows that Disney can handle sensitive topics with care.
Yeah.
And they could do it in a way that, we're not getting rid of it. We're still celebrating it, right? Because Native Americans still need to be celebrated.
They're still
right.
They still are a huge part of American culture. Big
exactly.
time.
Yeah. So we can't just erase them from Disney parks completely, but we could have a more sensitive and more accurate approach to them.
Yep.
Back in the day when Disneyland opened, they had this whole area of a Native American village, and they had actual Native Americans that worked there. They were, kind of showing off their culture, and you could buy
they have
things
people who are from the native countries in Epcot.
Exactly.
Same deal. Yeah.
And it was really cool,
That's cool.
And they don't have that anymore. But that might just be a slight tangent. But I feel like there's a way to do things and to still be able to enjoy things.
So going back a little bit to the Cars attraction that's taking place, draining the river, getting rid of Tom Sawyer Island. Let's focus on that a hot sec. I know you.
I said I was gonna have some feelings about that.
You got some feelings. So my biggest thing about Cars 2 is think about Test Track. Test Track is down a lot in Disney World, mostly because it rains all the time in Florida, which is a thing, right? And so if we're going to be putting a similar ride system now in Magic Kingdom, where like a big ticket attraction is going to be down a lot due to weather, is that really the smartest move? So I guess
makes me think that they're not going to use that ride system. It's going to have to be something different.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, they're doing a lot of work on Test Track right now as we speak.
Yep.
I don't know if they're going to fix the issues of why it's down so often, and they're building this attraction from scratch, right? So they're going to take into consideration the fact that it rains all the time in Florida.
I hope
And
so.
I feel like they're not going to build something that they know will just not function correctly.
I
So
hope so, man.
they're going to do something with this ride system. They're going to fix it, and they're going to make it work. Like, I do have a lot of faith in the Imagineers, right? I do have faith that they're going to do it. And I also have faith that whatever theme they have for cars, that area itself will be cohesive and cool and well themed, you know?
So then so what are your thoughts then about draining the river?
So yeah, I hate it. And I hate it because I feel like you could put Cars Land somewhere else, first of all.
Yes, you
And
you can go
second
anywhere,
of all,
go anywhere.
yeah. Second of all, I feel like what we end up losing, yes, you can argue that people don't go to Tom Sawyer's Island and people don't really ride the riverboat, which I rode the riverboat my last trip, again, and it's gorgeous. But what you're losing is aesthetic. And I feel like part of the thing about going back into Frontierland is feeling like you're in this time and place, right? You're walking through this Frontierland. I can't get the word strip mall out of my brain now. You're walking through the Frontierland strip mall, right? And you look out, you see this river, you see people on this raft heading over to this island, and
you mentioned something in the last episode about kinetic energy, or just like that visually seeing something move, and
it brings life to the land.
A big riverboat is cool to see. Like it does bring a sense of happiness to see.
Exactly. I think that Disney is sacrificing a lot of aesthetic to put in Cars Land. And I also get the feeling that Disney just hates bodies of water at the Magic Kingdom because
real estate. It's real estate. It takes up a lot of real estate.
It does. Let's think back to this wonderful little attraction we had, Andrew, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh man, yeah, you're beefing.
It was it was a big footprint. It was a lot of water. It was a submarine, the Nautilus, and it was just so cool. Right in the middle of Fantasyland. And what they do, they drained the river, they paved over it, and they put Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
Yep.
It's the same thing that's happening now, or they're going to drain this river and put Cars Land. But Andrew, that's not the only time they've done this. Do you remember an attraction that we used to have Magic Kingdom called the Swan Boats?
Yeah,
Anybody?
Swan Boats.
The Swan Boats.
Oh yeah, remember the
Swan
Boats.
That went around the front of Magic Kingdom. It went around the castle moat, which you can say, "Oh, Nick, there is a castle moat. It's still there." Okay, yeah. It's like maybe a third of what
it's not as grandiose. It's not as grandiose as it once was.
So they got rid of this attraction, which was just a leisurely, again, aesthetic attraction. It was these big swans, beautiful boats that would circle the castle. Just imagine how pretty that is. You see all these gardens and these swans. And they got rid of that. They expanded the hub, which, again, don't get me wrong. I love the new hub with the AstroTurf, right? We call it the hub grass.
Yep.
All that stuff. It's gorgeous.
Great firework viewing space.
Exactly. A lot of views for that. But what did we sacrifice? We sacrificed water. It feels like whenever Disney needs land at the Magic Kingdom, they're like, oh, where's their water?
Where's water? Get rid of the water.
Exactly. Yeah. So the concept art for Cars does have like some little waterfalls and stuff in it. But it's not the same thing as a big, beautiful river. And then I wonder, how's the transition going to be from that Frontierland area over to Cars?
What are we going to be looking at right as we go into that? Like there's that like a wind tunnel, right? That you take that goes right into Frontierland
from Adventureland.
Adventureland, right? Like because right now the first thing that you see is the riverboat and the river and Tom Sawyer Island.
It's gorgeous.
Right.
But one thing I do want to say about the Rivers of America is it was a Walt thing in Disneyland. And I understand that Magic Kingdom isn't Disneyland. And this is kind of one of these things that I've had to come to terms with, right?
Yeah,
we were talking
big time.
We were joking before we got on the air about how the stages of grief, right? Yes. And like, where am I on this idea of getting rid of the Rivers of America? And I've come to the idea of acceptance. One of the things that I've had to accept, Andrew, is the fact that this is a different park.
It is.
Not only is it a different park, but Walt never stepped foot in Magic Kingdom. This is not Walt's park.
That's true.
And it was made with the blueprints of Disneyland, but it's not Disneyland.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things in Disneyland that are untouchable because Disneyland is a classic park, right? You're not going to rip out the Rivers of America in Disneyland. You're not going to get rid of the Mark Twain riverboat in Disneyland. It's not going to happen. Not only the fact that it's part of Walt's Park, but the fact that that's where Fantasmic is, and they're not going to get rid of Fantasmic.
Yeah.
But it's different. In Disneyland, it's small, it's quaint, it's Walt's Park, it's homey, it feels good, right?
Yeah.
Magic Kingdom is this enormous theme park, the most popular theme park in the world, essentially. And you have to have a different approach.
It's a global destination. It's a global destination, yeah.
So you have to have a different approach. So that's why I was saying earlier that, well, then let's just get rid of these, super broad land names because it doesn't really matter as much in Magic Kingdom. If you want to make Magic Kingdom, this epic theme park with, all these crazy IP and these crazy rides and stuff, and that's fine. But don't try to hold on to the Disneyland aspect of Magic Kingdom. Make it its own park. And I think that's what they're doing by adding Villains Land, by adding Cars Land, by getting rid of Rivers of America.
Yeah.
They're making this its own park. They're giving it more of its own identity away from Disneyland. There's too many people that are like, they're Disneyland people. They're like, I don't need to go to Disney World. Or Disney World people being like, I don't need to go to Disneyland.
We have Magic Kingdom. Why do I need to go to Disneyland?
Exactly. And I think if they embrace the fact that they are different parks, that this is not Disneyland, then I feel like that opens so many doors, and that would make people like us, yes, we're going to be nostalgic, and yes, we're going to miss things, but understand why they're doing it, because Andrew will always have Disneyland.
So listeners, as always, what do y'all think? What do y'all think about this? What do you think of the future of Frontierland? What do you think about the theming and the name of Frontierland? Do you wish it would stay? Do you want something different? What do you think of Nick's opinions about having a little bit more of a subgroups within lands? Let us know. DM us. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. We want to hear from you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
We swear we'll get to Little Kana at some point. See you next
time.
Eventually.
See you next time. Bye, guys. Thanks again for listening to the Mickey in Minutes podcast. If you liked it, subscribe and leave a review on Apple or Spotify. Follow us on Instagram at Mickey in Minutes and check out mickeyinminutes.weebly.com for show notes and exclusive content.